This allegation that the US is putting against Pakistan of turning a blind eye, how fair is that?
Well, it's not particularly fair. Pakistan is among the countries that have suffered the most from the post-9/11 world, in which everything that had been going on in Afghanistan for the last for the 3 decades prior to 9/11 sort of came full circle, and the blowback of whatever was happening there after 2001 struck Pakistan more severely than any other country. So there's a sense of deep anguish amongst Pakistanis when they hear American newspapers, American commentators, and particularly U.S. government officials lecture Pakistan about somehow wanting the U.S. mission to fail, about somehow supporting terrorists inside Afghanistan. It doesn't quite accurately capture what is actually happening between Afghanistan and Pakistan with the U.S. in the middle of all of it.
Indeed, those sweeping generalizations, you're right. I mean, it's wrong to make them. However, there is this perception that in certain areas, certain Islamist movements or the Taliban, whichever name you'd like to use, has an influence, and a very strong influence.
Well, it's hard to argue against the fact that there is a global consensus that the Haqqani network in particular, among all the pro-Taliban groups, the Haqqani network in particular is vicious, has made things worse in Afghanistan, and represents values and represents a way of doing things that is unacceptable to the international system. To that extent, I think Pakistan needs to do whatever it can to end the free reign that the Haqqani network enjoys in terms of its operations in Afghanistan. But again, to suggest somehow that it is Pakistan that is entirely to blame for the Haqqani network's ability to strike in the heart of Kabul on any given day suggests that there is no agency whatsoever in Afghanistan itself, that neither the U.S. nor any of its 40-plus allies that have troops in or have had troops in Afghanistan, nor the rather substantial investment in the Afghan state's infrastructure, that all of those things put together can't somehow prevent the Haqqani network from doing what it does within Afghanistan, and that all of the blame should be laid at the feet of Pakistan, again, I think is escaping serious conversations that need to be had within the United States and within its Western allies, and especially within Afghanistan, about what burden of responsibility is on those countries. Again, I think Pakistan needs to do more to satisfy the rest of the world, but the fundamental question here is not whether Pakistan is making these things happen, but whether the other countries that have a troop presence in Afghanistan are doing enough to prevent them from happening.
So is the message that Tillerson is bringing to Pakistan, is that going to reverberate around the other countries? Is that message going to carry?
I think ever since the bomb attack in Kabul in May, which came very close to a number of diplomatic buildings in Kabul, there's been a consistent, strong messaging from Pakistan's friends in the West, and particularly from the U.S. I think Pakistan has some things that it can and should do, and there's been many Pakistani voices that have argued for those things to happen, such as a more robust crackdown on the Haqqani network and members of their families and their financial assets and what have you. But to be completely honest, the ability of Pakistan to turn the tide in Afghanistan, where a 16-year war effort funded by U.S. taxpayers, in which U.S. troops and the finest U.S. troops, the finest U.S. machinery, the finest U.S. intelligence and systems, all of those things have been employed, and yet if the argument about the situation today is that Pakistan hasn't done enough, whilst Pakistan has lost 70,000 citizens, nearly 10,000 troops and soldiers and policemen, and has completely damaged its own social and economic fabric, those things don't quite add up.
Mosharraf Zaidi, former advisor to the Pakistani Foreign Ministry, thank you very much, sir, for joining us.